Mintlify is the documentation solution for modern tools and teams, especially dev tools. Now, you may not know this, but I worked professionally as a user education specialist using a competitor to Mintlify for 8 years. When I first saw Mintlify, I was immediately hooked because of all the dev tooling they have built directly in. This is a sponsored video, but I'm not going to try to sell you on Mintlify. Their quality speaks for itself. I simply want to help you walk through, if you've already decided to choose Mintlify, to get set up quickly. Now, in this video, we're going to go over developing docs locally on your machine, getting your docs up online at your own domain, and then help you understand the basics of writing documentation with Mintlify, including structure, styling, theming, components. We'll even talk some about the API docs and the playground. So if you're ready to get started with the Mintlify, let's walk through how to set it up in 10 minutes. All right, before we do too much, let's get started with the requirements. You'll need Node.js, the Mintlify CLI, and a GitHub account. You can check that you have Node installed by opening your terminal application and typing node-version. Currently, you need Node 19 or higher, but that may have changed since I recorded this video, so check the Mintlify docs to be sure. If you don't have Node or need to upgrade, go to nodejs.org, download the LTS version, and install it like any other program on your computer. Next, you'll need the Mintlify CLI. It's a good idea to install it globally, which you can do with this command. Finally, make sure you have a GitHub account. Mintlify uses GitHub to integrate your docs with your code and make source control easy. And because it's connected to your GitHub account, you own all your documentation. We're going to look at local development first. So let's get started with their starter kit, which is a GitHub repo you can clone to your machine and get up running locally. You can find the starter kit linked in the docs. Just clone it to your machine, then cd into the starter repo you just cloned. Now here's the cool thing, since we already installed the CLI globally, running Mintlify dev will get this running locally on your machine. Take a few moments to look around the sample docs, then simply change some text and save to see the changes live. Global configuration for your site lives at docs.json. You'll find it at the base of your repo. Here you can choose between different layout themes with nice autocomplete to see all your options. And this configuration file is also where you change your site title, set your brand colors, adjust the typography to match your brand's look and feel, and more. Oh, and every Mintlify site includes light and dark mode options by default. There's so much you can do in the global settings that it's worth looking through the docs, from styling to structure, API configurations, SEO and search, and much more. You may have noticed that the majority of docs.json configures the navigation of your site. So let's talk about that more. You'll see that this sample doc site includes two top-level properties, tabs and global. You can organize your navigation however it works best for you, and Mintlify offers pages, groups, dropdowns, and more to make that easy. Here, notice that they've chosen to organize everything in tabs, and then nested groups and pages to further structure the docs. And the global section shows anchors no matter what tab is visible. Some navigation items can take icons like these anchors. Here you can include any valid icon values from the Font Awesome or Lucid icon sets. Let's switch from tabs to a dropdown by changing tabs to dropdowns, and then updating the two tab subproperties to dropdown. With dropdowns, it's also a good idea to include icons to make it easy to identify your preferred dropdown option at a glance. Next, let's look more closely at how the default navigation is structured. Groups provide structure within the displayed section in the docs, and pages define which items show in which group. And you can continue to nest these as needed. For more advanced use cases, Mintlify offers both versioning and localization. I'd encourage you to explore the docs if you need these structured helps. Before we do anything else, we should write some docs. And here's where Mintlify really shines. The actual documentation pages are written in MDX, a modified version of Markdown that lets you use React components directly in Markdown. As you make changes and save, everything Hot Module reloads to make development super quick. Of course, you can use Markdown headings, block quotes, code blocks, and more. Mintlify also offers custom components ready to use. You can find them all in the Components library docs. Let's add this accordion group by copying and pasting the example code. There's no imports needed, everything just works. It's worth it to play around with these examples. You'll see callouts, for instance, can be for communicating info, warnings, tips, and more. Or code groups can hold multiple code blocks. Oh, and by the way, do you see how they provide a language to show proper syntax highlighting and a file name to show that as the tab name? There are so many little hidden gems here. Like you can add syntax highlighting with line numbers and curly braces. So you can write your docs in basic Markdown, but those are accompanied by custom components built for documentation. At the top of every page, you can define important front matter, like the page title, description, sidebar title, and more. These fields are especially helpful for navigation and SEO, and Mintlify takes care of displaying the data in all the right places. It's time to move from local development and actually get this up somewhere public. So first of all, we're going to commit our changes and push them to GitHub. So let's run the commit command and then push the changes to my own remote repository. Next, we'll need to tell Mintlify where our docs live. If you haven't already, create a Mintlify account at mintlify.com and add a company name to your profile. In our case, since we started with our own repo, we won't need Mintlify to create one for us. Let's skip the authentication and just point Mintlify to our public repo. That's it. The dashboard shows it's already building your docs. Once it builds, you can visit to see all your changes. Now the entire flow becomes truly powerful when you add the GitHub app. Mintlify uses the app to build preview deploys for every pull request and update your public site when you merge. Let's return to my code, create a new branch, and then commit some changes. As soon as I create a pull request, the Mintlify app begins generating a preview deploy. You can also find preview deploys on the Mintlify dashboard. Oh, also, if you have less technical people on your team or just prefer a web interface for writing docs, you can use the built-in editor to make changes visually and then publish them immediately. I still want to show you how Mintlify enhances API docs, but while we're here, let's go ahead and add our own custom domain. Under Settings, choose Custom Domain and then add your domain. In my case, I'll add it to my website at docs.codinginpublic.dev. Now, using a subdirectory like this requires adding a CNAME record to my DNS configuration, and mine happens to live on Netlify. So I'll add my records there, and then return to Mintlify to confirm the changes. It may take a few minutes to propagate, but as soon as it's ready, you'll see a confirmation that it's connected and you're live. Finally, let's talk about API docs. They're crucial for any dev tool, and in fact, I go as far to say that if this is all Mintlify had, I would still use it just for this. You can create API endpoints in two ways: automatically using the OpenAPI spec or manually with MDX. First, let's look at the OpenAPI option. The example app actually includes this method. They add the API spec document directly in the repo, although you can reference a remote file like we'll see in a moment. If you include an OpenAPI.json file in your repo, Mintlify will automatically detect and parse it for you. To decide which endpoints or webhooks to show, you can specify the exact structure and then create MDX files for each endpoint you want to show. Just remember to add the OpenAPI property in each of these files and to point it to the right endpoint. That's it. Mintlify parses everything and automatically generates the pages for you. Honestly, this blew my mind the first time I saw it, but it gets even better. If you don't want to configure all this yourself, just pass your config file or the remote endpoint for your OpenAPI spec, and Mintlify will generate every endpoint. And by default, Mintlify creates an interactive playground so your users can see your API in action, even if your data structures are nested and complex. Now, if you're not using an OpenAPI spec file, no worries. You can use the other option I mentioned earlier, MDX. Here, this is a little bit more manual, but you get the same features in the end. Under the API config option, you can specify your server and any auth requirements for the endpoints. Then create MDX files that have the API property in the metadata. Identify the method and endpoint. You can even include path params. Mintlify scraper will pick this up and parse it. Now, again, this option is a bit more manual, but you can use the param fields, request example, and request response components to add your spec for each endpoint directly in the MDX file. And by the way, if you support multiple languages, you can include these options and Mintlify will handle the rendering, whether you use the OpenAPI spec or the request example component in MDX files. Again, Mintlify just gets devs and makes it all so easy. I hope this quick walkthrough has given you everything you need to know to get started with Mintlify. But this is really just the beginning. There's so much more, from a CI checker, authentication, and a lot of AI forward functionality like AI chat, auto-generated MCP servers, auto-hosted LLM.txt files, and other markdown that helps LLMs parse your site, and so much more. Thanks so much for walking through this setup guide with me. If you're interested more in Mintlify, check out the link below. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Happy coding.